Next is the Department of Public Works Pavement Management 3-year plan and year in review.
Good evening.
Oh,
Let's hope this boots up nicely. Voila. All right, good evening. Dave Field, Director of Public Works. I'm here to talk about our annual road paving program and what we did last year. So I'll just give a brief review of what pavement management is, review what our work from last year, and then go over our recommended 3-year plan, and then discuss the budget impacts with that plan. So pavement management, really simply, is doing the right thing at the right time, in the right place, and doing it the right way. We use several different tools. Road surface rating is one of them, where each road is surveyed by an engineering technician, and the distresses are documented. The severity and prevalence of those distresses are then generate a road surface rating for every section of public road in the town. We also look at traffic volumes for those roads, what repair methods are needed based on the road surface rating, our available budget, and then we use a software product to help us calculate which roads we should be doing. So the road surface rating helps generate which repairs we do in different repair bands. So this chart, you can see a new road is 100 RSR, doesn't need any work, it's very cheap, $0 required, down to 0 RSR, road's basically impassable, is no longer there, and that requires a more costly repair. And then you have the various repairs that fall in the middle.
Dave, how many square yards are in a mile? I feel like I should.
Ooh, I don't have that offhand, but I could probably calculate that for you. But
fair enough.
I'll get that for you, sorry.
No, that's all right.
And then benefit value, this is the crux of what the program gives us. And we take every road section, has our RSR. We know what repair cost is needed for that certain repair, what that life improvement of the repair will be, and then what the traffic level is going to be. And that really is where benefit value comes into play. So looking at last year's repairs for fiscal year 2020, we were able to do $730,000 worth of repairs on about 15 miles of roadway. Our current RSR is 73, and our current backlog is $19 million. So if you recall last year, we see in the blue is the routine, that's crack sealing and various patching we've done. That's a routine maintenance item. Our preventative maintenance item, which we did on Highland, Purchase, and Central is shown in yellow. And then our mill and overlay is shown on Pine Street, and Hill and High. And so that was basically our plan. We intended to do Pond Street as well, reclamation on Pond Street. But when we dug into the design, we determined that we needed to do a little more work there. We needed to replace a water main before we could really go and do that road over responsibly. And we also needed a retaining wall. So we're working on those 2 items right now. We hope to get the retaining wall in this spring. And we're going to town meeting for funds for the water main project. And we've moved that Pond Street repair into next year's repairs. Are there any questions on what we've done or why we've done it? I can get into the impacts and budget later, but just this was last year's plan. Did anyone have any questions on it? Yes.
So assuming a 30-foot road width, Tom, there's 17,600 square yards in a mile of road.
17,600
square yards in a mile of road.
Yeah, the average road in Easton's probably closer to 24 feet, but that's, yeah, but that's, yeah, appreciate that. So
that's 80% of that number.
Yeah.
Then. And then Dave, just for the board and for the public, when you say you dug into design on Pond and there's a water main project, what you're saying there is that because there's utility work underneath a road, that what is the normal practice for DPW to be smart with the spending that you have for roads is if you're going to be doing a sewer or a utility project underground, you want to do that first and then throw a new road on top of it rather than
Exactly.
pave a new road and have to open it in 2 years.
Exactly. So our pavement management program gives us the initial screening.
Mm-hmm.
It uses planning level numbers for the repairs, and then we dig into each one of those. And sometimes we'll change a repair from a certain repair to another repair, maybe a more in-depth repair or a lesser repair, because we find the conditions are different. We do cores on the asphalt, figure out the asphalt level, and figure out what we can do. So sometimes we've gone where a road has reclamation recommended. We've done some alternative repairs, like a Samian overlay, which we did on Julie Road a couple years ago. So our initial screening said Pond Street was going to be up, and then we started getting into the design. We determined that the retaining wall, and then we really should do that water main prior to doing the road responsibly.
So at your rate, I took your 17,600, 80% for 24-foot wide instead of 30-foot. At a $32 reclamation, it's basically $500,000 to do a mile worth of reclamation.
Yeah, and I have an exact example of that coming up.
Ever need backup putting these slides together, I'm your guy.
I appreciate that, thank you.
But I think it just goes to show, though, that a lot of money doesn't go too far, given how much mileage we have.
Exactly. You'll see that a little later in a couple slides. You know, some of the routine maintenance is 80 cents a square yard, and we do a lot of routine maintenance, and that's needed. It's your biggest bang for the buck. Then our preventative maintenance, we're doing that at $8 a square yard. We're actually been bringing it in a little lower than that, around $7, but we use 8 for a planning number. So that we can do a lot of preventative maintenance, and that's basically keeping good roads in good condition.
Yeah.
Once we start getting down to that backlog of roads that are kind of failed, it's very expensive.
Yeah.
So that's been our issue, and I think we'll see that in a little bit, that we've been able to do a lot and keep our really good roads in good condition. There's a consequence to not doing that, and now we have what we're going to see more of is roads that are basically failed. And there's really no consequence in not doing a failed road because it stays failed. It's where you miss a repair band and you go from routine maintenance and you skip over a couple and go down too low, you wait too long, that's an opportunity cost you've missed.
Exponential
So again, we'll see that in a second, but we definitely have some funding issues coming up.
Thank you.
So our current backlog is 19 million.
Yeah, and that's been consistent since it's been between 19, 18 million each year since we started this program. We just really haven't been able to dig into that backlog at all.
And Dave, that's because just keeping status quo costs 1.1 million.
Yeah,
roughly?
1.4,
Yeah.
it depends on which method you look at, and we'll talk about that, but
yeah,
between
sorry.
$1 and $1.4 million
I
to
think you're probably-
stay
We'll let
where
you
we
finish.
are.
We're eager to
I'm
ask
jumping
all
ahead,
these
so
questions.
Literally.
I apologize.
Sorry about that.
So one of the things we've been trying to do is do the right repairs at the right time and do it the right way. So we're trying to use innovative paving wherever we can. We do utilize super pave mix design. We've done that for several years. We use quality assurance specifications. We require density testing, cores, and correlated non-destructive testing on all of our pavement that's put down to make sure that's the density is the biggest indicator on the quality of pavement, to make sure the contractor is giving us what we deserve and what's going to last. A road that's isn't constructed properly and doesn't have the density will not last as long. So by our specifications, we won't pay the contractors as much for it, or even anything if it's too far gone. We've been lucky. We've had good contractors that have been very reputable, and they've hit the 92 and 95% compaction that's required. So they've gotten their full payments. We haven't had to withhold any here. I have done that in the past in other places. But again, that's a very important thing, is to have quality assurance specifications. The contractor will actually bring out someone, test it, and then we bring out someone, an independent person, to test as well. And
What? Oh, sorry.
Go ahead, sorry.
I was just going to ask, what's super pave mix?
So super pave is just a different way of mix design. It's been around for a while, but Mass DOT has fully implemented super pave. It's what it says. It's a superior performing asphalt pavement. It's just a different method to use. The way they mix it, the way it's compacted, the way it's tested. So it's tested to simulate wheel loads, and so you have an N value that goes on expected amount of truck traffic over the time. So instead of just mixing like in a recipe bowl what we used to call a Marshall mix and say that's our mix. Doesn't matter what type of stone I put in there or what characteristics. You look at the individual characteristics of the stone, the aggregate, and the binder, and you simulate it and see how it performs. And then you do more testing than usually was done previously, stripping and things like that, to make sure that's going to last.
Understood.
David,
Yes.
the picture on the left indicates on the left of that picture a streaking kind of treatment that the town gives. Is that a temporary kind of thing, going to lead on to something else when we have more money, or could you explain that?
So that's the crack sealing you see on that picture on the left lane. That's an overlay. I think that's Bay Road. We did that a couple years ago. So we're just doing a conventional overlay on that road. That's the crack sealing is our first line of defense on any road. So anytime we see cracking, we want to put a crack filler down to prevent water from getting into our road system. And that freeze thaw and the water really deteriorates the road really rapidly. So we want to make sure we keep our roads watertight and keep that in good shape.
And there's no prediction of when and if it ever becomes fully redone, such as...
No, it really has no prediction on that, because this was probably a road with a repair band level of 70 at the time this was paved, that picture was taken. And we'll start crack sealing something when it gets to about a 90. We'll start crack sealing it all the way down. And even sometimes we crack seal a road that may be further down the curve that we're just trying to preserve because we know we can't get to it. We don't have the funds for it. Crack sealing is still a very cheap way to try to keep a road in good shape. So we use this on a wide range of roads. And we use that technique under our preventative maintenance as well. So the roads we're going to talk about for preventative maintenance, the first step we're going to do is go out there and crack seal it, and then we're going to go over it with a preventative coat over it.
Okay.
And Dave, so although some folks don't necessarily like the aesthetics of crack sealing, that's actually the smartest thing we can be doing to try to keep a road functionally healthy for as long as possible.
That's correct. I mean, it's not aesthetically appealing. We understand that,
Yeah.
but it's a very important road to keeping our network in good shape.
Yep.
And then we also use warm mix asphalt. That's an asphalt that's produced at a lower temperature with modifiers. So we don't have to heat the asphalt up as much. We don't waste greenhouse gases, and we don't volatilize the bituminous binder and cook off the best parts of the mix. We keep that in the road itself. So warm mix is a very effective tool for us as well. So just looking at the repairs since we've started, we've touched a lot of roads. You can see, like mostly, all of our collectors and major and minor collectors have been touched. We haven't got into a lot of subdivision roads, as you can see, but we've pretty much touched all our main roads. And over the last 6 years, we've done $7.2 million worth of work on 115 miles of roadway, and we're averaging about $900,000 a year. So it's not a bad thing. We're not doing bad, but we're probably not doing as much as we need to, and we'll go over that in a little bit. So looking at our plan going forward, our next 3-year plan, we have to look at what our anticipated funding is going to be. That's crucial when you're looking at a limited budget scenario. We're going to use our Chapter 90 funding as we have in the past. We usually have about $500,000 a year to spend on our roadways network, and then we'll utilize our available local borrowing. We borrowed last in FY20 $500,000. We do have that available going forward this year, primarily because Pond Street got delayed. So for fiscal year 21, we anticipate $1.1 million in funding, and then in 22 and 23, conservatively, we were estimating $500,000 available in funding, because I don't know if that's in the cards for additional borrowing at this time. If we do get it, then we'll reprogram those outlier years. We do a 3-year program, so we can project, give it to our utility partners like Columbia Gas, National Grid, look at our water issues. We look at where we patch potholes. We look where we have water main breaks. We screen all that together to try to come up with a 3-year plan that's responsible. But if we do get additional funds, we can add in roads as we retweak this plan going forward. So what does our 3-year plan look like? We're proposing $2.2 million worth of road improvements. and I'll go through each one individually. And the reason why we're proposing a little more than the 2.1 we've said is just based on our design numbers. We have been able to bring them in lower, and we have some roads that we just can't fit in the $500,000, so they're a little over. So that when you put them all together, we're a little higher, but we do believe we'll be able to get these done. So in 21, it's primarily preventative maintenance. Our ultra-thin bonded overlay, like we did last year on Highland Street in Purchase, we'll be doing that on Massapog, Eastman, Turnpike, a portion of Sheridan, the top portion of Sheridan, and a portion of East Elm Street that wasn't done with the other section going towards Brockton. We're also going to be doing reclamation on Pond Street, as I mentioned, and then some various routine maintenance. And that's not an overly impressive graphic. We're not touching a ton of roads, but it is not a bad plan. This is where it gets a little scarier in 22 and in 23. Really limited amount of roads. As you said, Tom, it doesn't go far. $500,000 doesn't go far. So we basically get Blackbrook Road done. And then in 23, we're looking at a small piece of Cranberry Lane down to the south, King Arthur Road, just a little portion of it, and Pleasant Heights Drive. So all these subdivisions are all basically in the same condition. We're using benefit value to screen that and pick out the ones that are the highest, but you could really just pick them out of a hat. They all need to be done. We have subdivision roads that are constructed primarily at the same time and have the same lifespan and are kind of in the same condition. So we have a huge backlog that it's going to take a while to really address at this funding level. So pavement management helps us to prioritize what we need to do, but it also helps us to look at what we should be spending. So as I alluded to, we'll go through that now. So we have two methods. One is the pavement management program itself. We use a program, it's a little more rudimentary than I would like, but it is effective. This is just straight line deterioration. It says if you have a road at this condition, it's going to lose at this rate. Some programs have a little fancier curves to them, where it's more of a polynomial curve, but these are straight line deterioration curves. But what this shows us, if we spent zero in that red line, if we spent $0 going forward, our RSR would drop from 73 down to close to a 70 in 5 years. So we definitely go down. The $1 million funding level gets us to pretty much stay even. It shows us a little uptick, but just about even at 73 in 5 years. And let's say if we were able to go $2 million a year in green, we'd make an improvement to just over 76 in 5 years. So that just shows you the range of outcomes based on what level of funding we put into it. The next is another simple way to do it, but it's a little more in depth, and the fact that gives us, I think, a little better number. This is a mile year analysis. So every year we have 117 miles of road. They get 117 mile years older. So we lose 117 network years on our roads. So we have to put life extension into our roads. So a life extension for crack sealing would be 2 years a mile. And down to reclamation at 20 years a mile. So, or mile years, I should say. Looking at what we did last year, we put in 69 mile years into our system, but we lost 117 for a net loss of 48 mile years. Looking back at the 6 years, I believe we're losing on average 29 miles a year. So we're just not quite there. FY16, we were able to actually gain, but pretty much every other year we've been losing. And what this comes down with is a cost per mile number of an average cost per mile of $12,000 per mile. And we know to get to 117 mile years, we need to be spending $1.4 million to stay there.
And Dave, just for the board's edification, fiscal 16 is the only year up there that showed a net gain, and that year was an anomaly because not only did it have the $500,000 annual borrowing, which we have been saying for quite some time now we're going to eventually taper off because we can't afford to keep doing it endlessly. That was also a year where there was a supplemental release of Chapter 90, where Chapter 90 was 300 million that year instead of 2, right? So we had 50% more state money to work with, and we also had the local funds. And so Chapter 90, we've been relying on forever, and it has, in all intents and purposes, been mostly level funded for
Years. I don't have that number off the top of my head, but it's been years.
many
and
years.
yeah.
And the MMA routinely looks at this, and I think the most recent number I saw was their estimate of what an adequate Chapter 90 bill would be closer to 650 million on the statewide level. And we continue, and the governor's budget proposal for fiscal '21 continues the 200 million level.
Yes, so that's exactly right. And so this is just another graphic showing what we've spent in the past and looking forward over the next 3 years. And then that target funding level from the mile year analysis, we're just not there. There's a gap. And, if we don't hit that gap, if we don't get our funding level up to that gap, our road service, level of service will decline. It's just unfortunate, but it's the facts. So in summary, I don't want to sound all doom and gloom. We are doing the right things. We're doing a good program. Our level of service has kind of hung pretty steady for a while, although we've dropped now. We started with a 74. We started in 2013. We're at a 73, so we have dropped. Work has primarily been on our main roads. We have a significant backlog, and they're primarily those subdivision roads that are already in failure mode, need to be reconstructed. And without additional local funding, it's going to be difficult to get into those roads and make those improvements. So, be happy to answer any questions you have or talk about the plan or strategies.
Well, before I was elected, I never heard of any of these things. I never thought I'd know so much about pavement management. And it comes in handy because this is one of the most common questions that we get from people in town are, when are you going to get to my road, or questions about it. So we're able to answer based on your excellent presentations to be able to at least speak to some level about it. But we also have a lot of information about this, including the map and the estimates of when roads are going to be done right on the website for transparency. So appreciate you going into detail on this. It's very helpful to us. I hope a lot of people watch this at home tonight. It's not the best of news, but you do a great job with what you have, and that's all we can do.
Yeah, the thing we don't talk about here in this presentation is we will continue to patch, and we do some things within our operating budget. We'll rent a paver, we'll do a little milling. On roads we know we can't get to, but we have to because we're just spending money. We're out there day after day patching potholes. So we did some of that last year. We've done that a couple of years before. So we are going to earmark some money to try to get out there and do some temporary repairs to try to limp along in some of those roads. But that is the number one question I receive is, when's my road getting paved? And when a person calls and says, my road should be paved, it hasn't been paved in 30 or 40 years, I agree with you. And I can tell them, well, it's rated this, and it's this far down in the queue as far as benefit value and cumulative cost. And when I'm done, they usually understand. They're usually not happy, but at least they understand it, so that we're not just arbitrarily just picking the roads, and we're trying to stretch our dollars to be the most effective we can. But it's hard.
I genuinely believe that you do everything you possibly can in your team and the department as a whole with the constraint being the resources that are provided to you, candidly. As a matter of fact, I think the fact that we're at a 73 from what began as a 74 is Herculean and reflective of that effort. I think that this is a case of underinvestment, candidly. I look at our roads as a fundamental, it's a component of our town that I think when it goes too far is going to end up costing us materially more. I think to your point, if these roads get to the shape where they become all reclamation, I'm not saying they will, but that would be a $32 versus the cost of maintenance, which is there. I also have heard from town residents, as probably not as much as you have, but I have, even to the point where they express concern about the state of their roads as they go to sell their home, which is usually people's #1 investment in their life. And seeing some of the streets and the secondary roads that are around me, at least, that I walk on a regular basis, I can identify with what they say. I think that they are in the best shape that they could be, given the resources that we have. But I feel, from my perspective, I would like to find a way to get you more resources. I look at this as a capital item that should be supported with investment, much like a homeowner would take care of their roof to avoid the house from being challenged. I think the roads also need to fundamentally be taken care of. And I would like to see more investment in this area, not less, over time. I know that comes with it all the other challenges of having an incredibly tight budget, and using not having enough capital dollars to do the projects that we want. But I think that from what you laid out on that trajectory, it seems like we will be regressing, not getting better, based upon the current projection of spend. That's my takeaway. And that I think it's important we start to get better, not worse. And so I know from my perspective, I think that's very important to support, and I'll continue to look for ways to do that. The question that I do have a couple questions. Of the 19 million that is backlogged, how much of that is related to secondary roads?
Almost all of it. So we're anything that comes up for preventative has a higher, or routine has a higher benefit value.
Yeah.
So those lighter repairs, those higher on the curve repairs, are all been recommended already. So this program, this pavement management program, again, it's a little more rudimentary than others. It's effective for us, and we can use it, but it doesn't run us multiple scenarios. So if we have a road coming, like right now, I look at Foundry Street going towards Norton. Mm-hmm. That road, it doesn't screen right now as needing preventative maintenance. It's had routine maintenance several times, but probably next year, that's probably going to be at the point where it's going to pop up in the preventative maintenance queue again, and we'll have to get that programmed in because we don't want to lose that. So we have roads that are in good shape right now in that 90 to 100 band that will start falling into our preventative again.
Right.
So right now, a snapshot in time, most of our roads are the subdivision roads that are causing that backlog. But we have some roads that will then appear as they deteriorate, as they get older. Roads we've done in the last 10 years will start needing to be done again. Mm-hmm. So then they'll start appearing on the curve. So it's not a snapshot in time. It's the secondary roads that are the biggest problem right now, are subdivision roads. But that's not going to stay that way. It should be a healthy bell-shaped curve, basically, of good and bad roads. You should have a little of everything.
Yep.
Right now, our snapshot is really weighted towards the bad side.
And if we had to classify the 19 million by type, be it preventative or all the way to reclamation, is the majority of the 19 million in reclamation?
Yeah, reclamation.
As a result.
So, yeah.
In essence, if I could, the takeaway I feel is that those secondary roads are reclamation. They are the majority of the 19 million. And the reality is that the other roads that are in good shape will deteriorate, therefore taking up our funding on a go-forward basis, because, to your point, that is the best, I shouldn't say best, that is the largest bang or return, is taking care of those primary feeder roads, keeping them in relatively decent shape.
Yep.
I just think we have to do more, candidly. I know that's hard, and I don't have the solution, and I'm not a fan of raising the concerns, but I just think we need to do more, or we'll have a larger challenge fundamentally on our hands as time goes on. And so I, for one, as we go through the budget process, will continue to look for additional resources for this, and I'm sure there are many capital needs that we need to continue to support.
True. Thank you.
There are, Tom, if I could just add to that, your questions they're accurate, and I think Dave and I spoke about this obviously before this presentation was coming. There is no mistake. This is regressive. That's quite clear. I mean, we put a number on it for folks, but we know that we're not happy about it either. But the matter of fact is that the $500,000 that we were borrowing annually was a stopgap kind of approach from many, many years ago, in light of the then probably 6 or 7 year old structural revenue deficit that's now 13 years old.
Yep.
And one of the things that was inspiring the 2016 discussion about an override was this reality that we don't have enough recurring revenue to support these things. So everything we're talking about here is, you are right, we should all want additional resources for that, but the fact of the the situation is that this was never something that was intended to be a $500,000 borrow every single year that we could sustain, because Dave could give a similar presentation about the borrowing levels necessary for building maintenance.
Basically, any asset we have, I could
That's right.
expand.
So, I
agree. And I
I'm
think we're
concurring
on
with you that
again.
it's not a good situation, but it's one we've been forecasting for a few years coming now. That, and we'll talk more obviously in my budget presentation. There's some bright spots in what we're doing, but I mean fundamentally, there's only so much we can do.
Understood. And again, just to end with, thank you so much to you and the team for doing what you do get done with the limited resources we provide you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. Have a good night.
You too.
Good night, thank you.